Alaska cruises in 2026 are not the same as they used to be, and some of the biggest changes aren't being clearly advertised when you book. In fact, 5 different cruise lines have already quietly made changes to 163 Alaska port calls this season alone, including glacier days that people specifically book these cruises for, and most passengers don't even realize it until it's too late. But that's not the only thing changing. So here's exactly what's happening in Alaska right now and what it means for your trip, whether you're booking or have already booked. Let's get into it. So let's start with what might be the biggest change we're seeing right now, and that's what's happening with glacier itineraries. Because for a lot of people, this is the entire reason you book an Alaska cruise in the first place. A lot of itineraries used to include scenic cruising through Tracy Arm Fjord, which is known for narrow channels, floating ice, and getting up close to the Sawyer glaciers. But after a major landslide in 2025, one that actually triggered a tsunami inside the fjord, cruise lines started reevaluating whether it was even safe to continue sailing there. And now for the 2026 season, multiple cruise lines have either removed Tracy Arm entirely or replaced it with another glacier location because of ongoing safety concerns, unstable conditions, and the risk of additional landslides. So this just isn't a weather issue. This is a permanent itinerary shift, at least for the foreseeable future. And here's the part that most people don't realize yet, including us at first. 5 cruise lines, including Holland America, Carnival, Royal, and many others, have already quietly adjusted or canceled 163 Alaska ports of call because of it. That's not a small tweak. That's a fundamental change to the way a lot of people have booked. And here's where it really impacts you. If you're booking an Alaska cruise and you see something like Tracy Arm Fjord listed, or even something similar, there's a good chance that experience is being changed, substituted, or isn't even going to look the way it used to. In most cases, cruise lines are swapping this out for places like Endicott Arm, which is still beautiful, but it's a different experience completely than what a lot of people originally planned for. If scenic cruising and glacier viewing is one of the main reasons you're booking an Alaska cruise, pull up your booking confirmation right now and look at exactly what's listed today. Not what was advertised when you first booked, but what it actually says right now. Because this is one of the biggest behind-the-scenes changes happening in Alaska cruising this year. Now that we've covered the glacier situation, and it's a big one, let's talk about another major shift happening this season, and that has to do with the ships themselves. If you're planning an Alaska cruise this year, this is exactly the kind of stuff that can make or break your trip. So go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and click the notification bell. It really does help us out, and we genuinely do appreciate every single one of you watching. Now let's talk about ship size, because this is one of those areas where what sounds like good news can actually change your experience in ways you didn't expect. Cruise lines are starting to bring larger, newer ships into Alaska, including the brand new ships like the 4,300 passenger Star Princess from Princess Cruises. And those bigger ships bring a lot more passengers into ports that were built for a very different volume of traffic. Places like Juneau, Skagway, and Ketchikan already see multiple ships in port at the same time. Now add a ship carrying several thousands more passengers into that same space, and you start to feel it fast. What does that actually look like on the ground? Well, longer lines for excursions, popular tours selling out before you've even stepped foot on the ship, busier viewpoints, more crowded streets, and a vibe that can feel a lot more like a busy tourist hub than the wilderness experience most people picture when they think of Alaska. Alaska didn't get bigger, the ships did, and that changes the experience more people than most expect. And this isn't a hypothetical, it's already happening in more popular ports. So here's what we'd actually do before booking. Look up your sailing date and check which ships and how many are scheduled in port on the same day. Most major cruise tracking sites let you do this for free, and it takes about 60 seconds to check. We'll also leave a link to those in the description below. Now, if you're seeing 4 or 5 ships sharing your port day, that's your signal to either adjust your expectations or look at a different date, because 2 Alaska cruises can visit the exact same ports and feel completely different depending on how many ships are sharing that space with you. Now there's one more big shift happening this year that's giving people more options. So let's talk about who's brand new to Alaska this season. We're talking about lines like MSC Cruises and Virgin Voyages, lines that haven't traditionally been players in Alaska at all. And on the surface, that sounds like a great thing. More competition, more choices, and in some cases, potentially better pricing. But here's where it gets interesting. Not every cruise line approaches Alaska the same way. Lines that have been sailing Alaska for decades, like Holland America, Princess, or Celebrity, have built their entire Alaska product around the destination itself. Longer port times, wildlife-focused itineraries, and a culture that treats the off-ship experience as the main event. Now, with these newer itineraries, you're starting to see different styles of cruising show up in Alaska. MSC, for example, brings more of a European-style cruise experience. Virgin Voyages, on the other hand, leans more into a modern, adults-only experience with a bigger focus on entertainment, social spaces, and a more energetic onboard vibe. So you're not just choosing a cruise, you're choosing the type of Alaska experience you're going to have. And we're already seeing a lot of people asking, should I try one of these newer options or stick with a cruise that really knows Alaska? So here's the way we'd actually think about it. If the glaciers, the wildlife, and the ports are the main reason you're going to consider going to Alaska, go with a line that's been doing it for years. Now, if you're curious about different styles of cruising experience, whether that's MSC's more European feel or Virgin's more modern social atmosphere, those could be great options also. Just go in knowing how that might shape your overall trip. And with all these changes in play for 26, there's still a few more things you're going to want to know about before you book. Now here's another change that's flying under the radar, but could have a real impact on your trip. And that's what's specifically happening in Juneau, because starting this year, Juneau is strictly enforcing a daily passenger cap for cruise visitors. We're talking around 16,000 people per day on most days, and on Saturdays that number drops to about 12,000. Now most people hear that and think, great, less crowding, better experience, but 16,000 people is still 16,000 people. Which means those excursions are going to sell out significantly faster than when they used to. The supply is the same, but it's a more perceived urgency around when people are booking. So here's the strategy. If there's something you really want to do in Juneau, especially anything revolving around the Mendenhall Glacier or whale watching, treat it like a restaurant reservation, not a walk-in. Book it months before your sailing date, not days. Go into your booking confirmation right now, find your Juneau port day, and lock in whatever matters the most to you before someone else does. Now there's one more shift happening in Alaska that a lot of people don't catch until after they've already committed to a booking. And that's what's actually happening to the overall cost of the experience. Because here's the assumption most people make. The cruise fare looks similar to last year, so the trip should cost about the same. That's not really the full picture anymore. And it's not necessarily because cruise lines are raising their base fares dramatically. It's everything that sits on top of that fare and how the changes we've already talked about are quietly pushing those costs higher. Whale watching tours and glacier excursions that were running in the $140 to $170 range are increasingly booking at $200 or more. And the best slots are disappearing months before the season even starts. Also, check out sites like Viator to compare those prices to what the cruise lines are offering. You can sometimes save some serious money this way. Just make sure you leave enough time to get back to your ship before it departs, because cruise lines won't wait for you if you book a private excursion and it runs late. So here's another important piece of information for cruises sailing in or out of Vancouver or Seattle. Know that the FIFA World Cup soccer tournament will be happening from June 11th to July 19th of 2026. This will without a doubt impact availability and cost of hotels, flights, and other services in those cities. The bottom line is this: Alaska this year is absolutely still worth it, but it rewards people who plan ahead, and it's going to cost more than it used to for people who don't, which is exactly why we're headed back ourselves very soon. We want to see firsthand how this season is actually playing out, whether Endicott Arm delivers the same experience that Tracy Arm used to, what the new Juneau crowds actually look like on the ground, and what we do differently seeing it all again. So if you're planning an Alaska cruise and want real, first-hand answers to any of those questions, make sure you're subscribed and that notification bell is on, because those videos will be coming up in the near future and you're not going to want to miss them. Now, if you're looking for port tours and other helpful tips for Alaska cruising, check out these videos right here. Thanks a lot and happy cruising.